Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doctor Who, as well as the latest episode of Charmed. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I go to time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I said about this week's episode of Doctor Who, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Charmed. But the first thing I'm going to do is talk about this week's episode of Doctor Who. So in this episode, it's kind of an interesting circumstance. They never actually explained what they were actually looking for and what they were up to on that planet, looking for something specific. And I always like that little bit of like, oh, we're not just jumping into the next adventure. In between episodes, they had a lot of other adventures. Like, oh, I took you here, I took you there. But they were looking for something, and they get hit by a sonic mine, and they basically work up on the Tsuranga, which is this portable medical ship, which is kind of interesting all on its own. It's actually kind of interesting too, because like the only person in this episode that was kind of hit the hardest was the doctor. I'm wondering why. Is it something with her Gallifreyan like physiology, or is it just like something else entirely? Was it just kind of like, was she at the forefront of the mind? Because everyone was kind of standing a little bit back, so maybe she kind of took the brunt of it, or maybe when she got hit, she got flung into something. But she was the one that was kind of the most hurt. Like everyone else was kind of a little disorientated, but she was the one that was kind of in the most pain. But I guess, I don't know, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I was like wondering if something more was going to come back around that, but it's just kind of like no, she's hurt. But I guess it does play a role in it because of the whole circumstances. She is kind of a lot more like agitated, and she's just trying to like, no, I got to go find my ship. Got to get to TARDIS. It's like, I just got it back a couple episodes ago. It's like, can't be separated again. Because it's interesting. You never see the Doctor get desperate like that. But I guess it's very rare for the Doctor to be that far. I mean, she's literally like 4 days away from the TARDIS. So I guess it's like being separated yet again is a little nerve-wracking. So that's kind of how, ultimately what I chalked that up to. Because when it came to like Astoff, when she was like, he was kind of getting mad at her because it's like, she's like, no, if I have to, I'll reprogram the ship to basically go back to the TARDIS. And he's like, there are people on this ship who need to get to where the ship is going so they can get medical service, and you're being selfish. And it made the Doctor kind of stop, and she's like, you're right. She's like, I guess just the sonic mind kind of got me. Because it's like I said, you've just never seen the Doctor get that like disorient, like out of character like that desperate like that. I mean, I guess yes, but not. I don't know. It seemed very interesting in that regard. I guess it's just, like I said, her being disorientated plus just all of that. Just because also it's kind of a junk planet too, where people would easily come and snatch it up, and just like if the TARDIS gets going like that, like someone can end up selling it off, and it's just like, that's her partner in crime. That's her home. It's kind of special to her. It's been by her side for so long. I mean, especially when you think about the fact of the matter is companions have come and gone over the years, but the TARDIS has always been by her side. It's kind of the only consistent companion the Doctor just always had all across time and space, obviously. What was also interesting too was the fact it's a conversation that the Doctor had with, Eve Sincero, being like, oh my God, there's a whole book about you. Oh, you're so amazing. It's like, wait, you're the Doctor, and don't they have a whole chapter in there about you? What? No, it can't be me. And they're, Doctor, common name and all that, but walks away and he comes back in. It's like, it's more like a volume rather than a chapter, just clarifying that. But what makes this episode interesting is that basically all of them are stuck on this ship with this thing known as a patine. It's a very interesting thing. Like, basically you can't touch it because it has poisonous skin. The thing eats all non-organic things. So it ends up killing one of the pilots, which is kind of sad. It's Astoff's, because I thought would be interesting, because you saw the dynamic from him and the Doctor initially of just like the Doctor's like, no, I'll go to the more dangerous place, you go to the other place, and he's like, no, I'll go to the dangerous place, you go to the other direction because you're hurt. And she's like, I don't like being told what to do. And he's like, I can tell. Like that back and forth like that. I was like, oh, I thought we got to see more of that episode, but sadly that's not the case. Poor Mabley, because like for her, she's the one that's kind of like, because she ends up talking about like Astoff's the one who had more confidence in her. She didn't really have much confidence in herself, so losing him was kind of like a big blow to her. But getting back to it, that patine thing is very interesting. Like I said, like the whole not eating people, but rather non-organic things, and it's literally making its way through and eating the ship. There's something else that it kind of reminds me of. You know what? I think it makes me think of, there's an alien in Ben 10, the cartoon, I don't remember if it ever popped up in the earlier of the other series. It might have. I think it was one of later alien he got in the original series. I know I'm going to a huge tangent, but there was an alien, he ate stuff and then he spit it out as like gunk balls or something, you know? It's just like, it looked almost like sewage balls or something. I forget, like, no, I think it wasn't even sewage ball. I think it was like energy balls. Like it ate to like spew it back up. It kind of reminds me of that. Like obviously it doesn't operate the same thing, but the fact is it just kind of eats things. Interestingly enough, it ate the sonic screwdriver, but then spit it back up. I was about to say, oh my God, did the Doctor really just lose the sonic screwdriver? Which would suck because it's like you literally kind of quote unquote lost the TARDIS and now you lost your sonic screwdriver. But it's like, hey, it's back. Interestingly enough, it actually reboots itself later on. I don't think any of the other previous Sonics have ever done that before. I mean, but to be fair, I mean, it's kind of an extenuating circumstances. It's also the first one that the Doctor made herself, you know, none of the other Doctors did, because like it's, you know, at least some of the instances of like, oh, it came from the TARDIS, you know. Maybe there have been other instances, but this is the only one I really remember them making a point out of, like, oh yeah, the Doctor made this Sonic. So I'm pretty sure all of them are things that, well, like I said, 12 fiddled around with his Sonic in many different forms, like obviously changing it to shades at one point in time. You get the point. But finding out that really, like, the real thing about the Bating is the fact is it eats energy. That's what this is all about, because it just happens to be because of the path that they were taken to avoid asteroids and stuff. It's like, oh, this thing saw the ship as like this gigantic like energy source, and that's what drew it to it. Like it was eating all those machine parts because it was just trying to get at the energy tied to everything. That's why it went to the pods. It wasn't trying to kill Astophs. It was just trying to get the energy from the life clods. It's interesting, like, there's that quick moment in the episode where, like, because obviously it's run by, like, an antimatter drive, and the whole, like, part about the Doctor kind of nerding out and just being like, you know, I love it, both conceptually as well as actually, and just kind of, like, it being in awe about it. It's kind of like, I love that you're kind of dorking out about this right now. What I also thought was kind of a crazy thing, too, about this whole circumstance is basically because of the automatic system of the ship. It's like, oh, if you warn them that, like, oh, there's something attacking the ship, they'll destroy the ship, but there's no escape pods up there anymore, so they'd be stuck when it got destroyed. And if they deny it over and over again, it'd be like, oh, obviously there's something wrong here. The fact is the sensors are saying there's something wrong and you keep saying there isn't. That must mean that you're lying, and so we'll destroy the ship. So it's kind of like you're screwed on either front. So I thought that was kind of an interesting predicament to find themselves in. I also like the bit when the Doctor is trying to explain everything. It's just kind of like, okay, this is what's happening. And then the camera circles around the room and no one's saying anything. I was like, oh. I was like, what's this? And the Doctor's like, oh. I actually thought there'd be more questions, but apparently not. I thought that was kind of pretty neat. I guess because it would make sense under those circumstances, you'd think someone would, but I guess everyone that's with her is probably like, well, we understand the situation, you know, let's, you know, we're waiting for your solution. And I guess everyone else is like, okay, we processed the situation, waiting for your solution or whatever you might potentially have planned. Cause we even had like, Eve and, the Doctor kind of on the same wavelengths of like, oh yeah, the antimatter drive. It's like, oh yeah. It was just kind of interesting, especially because the Doctor was kind of geeking out a little bit about Eve too. Cause it's like, oh, she's kind of like a rock star, you know, pilot and stuff like that. She's kind of well known, you know, so. Which the whole situation with Eve and her brother Durkis is kind of a sad situation, just because it's like she didn't tell her brother that she was sick. It's kind of sad because she has like pilot's heart, and it's just like she's taking adrenaline blockers because basically the adrenaline is going to gather around her heart, and like one pulse could end up killing her if it's bad enough. And it's a situation of like, because she's so well known for being this pilot, she's kind of like the poster child, like she's the go-to, she's this legend, and it's like, I guess she feels like me having this condition, it's like, it takes away from the fact is that she is this legend. It's just kind of like, it's not possible for me of all people to get this thing, and hiding it from her brother, because it seems like her and her brother didn't get along, but it seems like this sad situation actually ultimately brought them together, and they kind of had closure towards the end of him being like, it's like, she's like, I'm sorry I kept a secret. And he's like, I got secrets. Like, I love you and how proud I am of you. And she's like, I love you too, bro. Because the fact is, she was always worried about her bro being notified about her death. And the fact of the matter is, under these circumstances, I think these scary circumstances, she's actually glad that he's here by her side, type of thing. And it's kind of sad that in the end, like, she died. because I know that the doctor was trying to be the pilot so that Eve wouldn't have to be, because knowing her condition and everything. But, you know, there was no time for the doctor to kind of, I was like, oh, we're going to do a situation of the doctor kind of getting a deep dive, or, you know, Eve kind of explaining everything and the doctor getting it immediately. But it's like they didn't have the time needed to really brush her in, like, get into this situation. It was like kind of like a now or never type of thing. So it's kind of saddening. And then there's a whole situation with Yaz. So it was kind of interesting about, you know, it's like, oh yeah, like, males having males, like males get pregnant, but only the men have men, girls have girls. I thought it was kind of an interesting situation. But that whole circumstances around Yaz's situation was kind of like, oh yeah, like I have to, my circumstances, I feel like I need to give up my job because I'm not good enough to be a parent, and just currently with everything going on just in the world as well as his own situation. And it kind of brought up an interesting topic, and that was Ryan's specific situation, that basically his dad was his age, being like 19 when Ryan was born. And he also found out about how his mom died. His mom died from like a heart attack. He even found her body when he was 13, and it's like, that's rough, dude. And his dad, the reason why he had the last time he saw his dad was a year ago, and it's because his dad's been, and his exact words was like, a gap in his life. He wasn't there. And like, you know, after his mom died, it's like, yeah, I can kind of understand, because it's like, a lot of people say, I look like my mom, and I'm looking at me, it's probably just a constant reminder of her being gone. Maybe it's just his dad in general doesn't handle loss well, hence why he wasn't around when Grace died. I mean, that was the big thing too. It's like, this is your mom and you're not there. So, but you know, different people handle grief in different ways. So that is a question. Why now of all times? Like, you weren't really there in Ryan's life before, but why now of all times? Like, now it's like, after what happened with Grace, now you want to step in and kind of like, oh, you can live with me, was kind of the whole point from before, you know? So, when it came to the whole Pating situation, I thought it was kind of interesting how the doctor, cause like, oh, you're gonna get it to eat the bomb or something. I was like, I thought you really kill people or things. I was like, isn't it? And it was like, right, the Pating can't be hurt. It's very, very indestructible. And it's like, cause no known thing has been able to kind of hurt it. And it's like, all right, get it to eat the bomb. I love the whole thing of like, okay, yes, pick a number between 1 and 100. And the doctor, when Yasmin said 51, she said some word I didn't catch. I'm like, is that I guess it's supposed to be like, when rather than going lower or like rather than going right in the middle or lower, you kind of go like one notch above the middle, I guess is what she was kind of referencing. But also, it's like, oh, so what was the whole point of that? It's like, oh yeah, I took that much time off the timer. It's like, if I knew you were going to do that, I would have said more. And the doctor's like, nah, 51 is such a good number. And the doctor's like, oh my, I hope I'm right, because if I get this wrong, this would be so embarrassing. And Yasmin's like, you'd be embarrassed and you'd be dead. And then the Pating happens. She's like, see, I'm not bad. See, I'm not bad. See, I told you. It's, you know, it just all comes down to timing and stuff like that. It's so interesting how the doctor operates like that. And it's like, okay, the Patings get close. It's like, okay, anytime now. And it eats the bomb. And it's like, of course. And then ships it off into space. Being full like that is, I guess, it's less likely to attack anybody, especially them if they're, well, because it sounds like there was a thing that they could go to. They wouldn't have to kind of get back on a medical ship, the Tsuranga, to go back to where the TARDIS was. They could just, at the hub, kind of go from there. So, but I guess just if anyone else has to take that path, or the ship has to ever go back through that path, that thing won't be as much of an issue, just because it's full. At the very least, it will be for a while from the energy from the bomb. So I love that though, when because Yasmin was like, oh yeah, like, oh, they must have put the bomb on it, and the doctor's like, yeah, 10 points for Yas, and yes, I am scoring all of you. And Ronan, what was it? Get your game up, or essentially. And she pauses first. She's like, just like jokes. Like, I love you're still jokey like that. So good. But I also love that Ryan and Graham had to be essentially kind of support for Yaz going through labor. Graham being like, I've seen every episode of Call to Midwife. And Ryan's like, every episode? And he's like, yeah, while you're all messing around on YouTube, I'm watching something that could actually help me in life. And then it's kind of like this and that. And it just kind of like, oh, like, I just love the whole situation, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, because when it usually comes to the more medical bits, Graham tended to look away. So it's like, isn't that the times you should be paying the most attention? But okay. But I love when it was all said and done, like, you know, It's like, oh, what are you gonna name it? Avocado, after your greatest hero. I was like, what? Avocado, isn't that the name of a hero on Earth? No, it's a fruit. No, it's a vegetable, and that kind of going back and forth. It's like, I thought you were going to name the child after one of us, Graham or Ryan or Graham. It's like, I love that Yaz just kind of laughs. It's like, really? No, that'd be stupid. My child would be a laughingstock if they had that name. And I was like, that's so mean to say that right in front of their faces. But what was also interesting is that Ryan kind of shifted Yaz's opinion of like giving up the child, because it's like, you don't have to be the perfect dad because parents are going to make mistakes. All you have to do is actually be there. You're a good person and you'll be a good parent, It's like, yeah, there'll be hardships, but as long as you're there to kind of push through it, obviously speaking from an experience of his dad not being there, so I'm curious to see where that kind of goes going forward with the whole situation with Ryan's dad. Also, can't forget the best part of like Graham, like holding up for a fist bump, and Ryan looks at him and is like, no. And it's like, why do you keep doing that? Graham's trying to be so cool and Ryan's just shutting him down every time. It's just like, that's so mean and messed up, dude. I love it. But overall, like, obviously it had its kind of sad moments, but overall just like, a great episode and just a lot of fun. I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Charmed. Quite a few things went down in this episode, so let's break everything down. So first of all, we have the whole situation of like, oh, apparently they have to kill Angela. It seems like that is what's going on with the situation because they're being told by a elder who pops up, Charity, which once again plays into it more and more, which I find it so interesting because you see it from time to time, but it didn't happen a lot, at least not to my recollections. You never actually got to see any of like the elders in the original series. Like they popped up every once in a while, but it was never like a big thing. Like, the fact is, we got to know Charity. Kind of seems like she might pop in from time to time. Maybe we'll get introduced to other elders, or maybe she'll be like the one elder that they'll kind of consistently deal with. I don't know. Because I brought this up before, like, in the original series, like, the elders were white lighters, but in this series, it seems like they're witches, which I think is kind of an interesting thing. It also plays into it, interestingly enough, like, the fact is, because they are witches, they do have other abilities. Like, it seems like she can do multiple things. Like, she can like create this like purple whip around things. She can create like a protective field, like that charm she puts on the Harbinger. But she can also like it seems like that's probably like more so just magic in the sense of like, I guess like every witch has like their unique abilities and then stuff that's stacked on top of it, which does beg the question. Like, I'm wondering, does that mean like the witches, like even the charmed ones in this case, could get more than just 2 abilities, that they can get more? Or is it just going to be a situation of like, is that just like basic magic that Charity had memorized, and that her like her main unique ability is being able to strip people of their voices, which is a pretty powerful skill, which is so interesting to me, because we ended up finding out that this is all kind of tied to Marisol, who had the power of prophecy, which I think is so fascinating, because her power is, because that's what Phoebe's original power was in the original show. So, it does beg the question of like, will they eventually get more than just their initial unique abilities? Will they get a second one, or even more in this case? Like, in Mel's case, obviously Mel has the whole freezing time situation. So obviously her powers are reminiscent of the exactest Piper. So that begs the question, will she get Piper's blowing shit up ability? Now that's kind of something I brought up, before now. So that in itself is just kind of interesting. But also, like, the fact is your mom, because it never crossed my mind to think, all right, of course, your mom's a witch. Like I said, I'm sure like every witch has their unique abilities. I'm sure there's a lot of overlap, but still, like, so I'm sure I don't know, because I don't remember them really. To be fair, I don't remember every episode, but I don't really remember them giving too much time about like, oh yeah, the mom from the original series, like whether she really had an ability or not. I don't really remember too much of the story focusing on her prior to not being dead, because I feel like they lost, because like their mom dying, I think that was because she was like, I don't remember if it was like a significant thing like it is with Marisol in this series, like she was like murdered, because it turns out she's not the only one. There's like a whole bunch of elders that got murdered like after her too. There was at least 3. So, but getting back to it, the whole fact of the matter is, we have to kill Marisol. But Mel, I mean, not Marisol, have to kill Angela because that's the only way to kill the Harbinger. But Mel doesn't want to do it because for Mel, she blames herself because she's the one that pushed Angela to report on Professor Thane, and that led to her stressing out about it and ODing. And then it was like she would not even been in a position to be in the hospital to be possessed by the Harbinger if it wasn't for me. So that's why she kind of like Mel seems more than any of them seems to kind of bear the weight of the world on her shoulders in a sense. Because she feels kind of the most responsible for a lot of stuff. So, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. And once again, she is the one amongst the three of them. She is the one that kind of jumped on the whole being a witch / charmed one pretty quickly, so. And this whole situation turned into the complication I figured it would. That, like, oh man, like, obviously Nico and Trip are kind of suspicious. Well, Nico's not. Trip is. He's very suspicious of the sisters. Like, yeah, they're acting weird and everything. I also forgot to talk about it, but I thought it was kind of interesting. The fact is that, I'm blanking, Charity has an actual job. It's like, oh, she actually has something outside of just being an elder, which is such an interesting thing. Once again, the elders were just the elders before. Like, again, once again, they were white lighters, so they never really needed an extra, like, a job. I mean, Leo was, like, pretending, you know, before he revealed himself to be a white lighter. He was kind of like a repairman. That's kind of how he got introduced into their lives. So there's that whole like route of like, but that was just because that was him secretly supposed to keep an eye on his charges and stuff like that. So the elders kind of, you know, that's a different thing on its own. But I don't really remember them kind of playing out in that regard of like, oh yeah, like having jobs like that. So that's kind of interesting to think. Like, I guess they probably try not to use, you know, obviously there's a whole don't use magic for personal responsibility. So they probably try to do their own thing without gradually influencing the world, probably influencing the world in their own way, but through natural means and not just supernatural magic means, you know, but nevertheless, it actually led to an interesting debate between like, Melanie and Macy, because Macy's like, nope, we gotta kill Angela because that one life to save so many others. Because if this Harbinger gets a chance, it will kill everyone, because it also seems like it has basically the power to kill someone by just simply touching them now. But it's like, if this thing gets free, it's going to kill a whole bunch of people. That's going to lead to the source of all evil being, you know, risen. So it's kind of like, it's in her mind, it's like, oh, it's simple math, but Mel's like, no, it's still a life that's important. And it wasn't until Galvin actually talked to Macy that he kind of gave her a different perspective. Because, you know, she kind of looks at things from a very analytical point of view. Like, she tries to be very rational with her thoughts. And he kind of talks about the fact of the matter is, even that one life would still hurt. Because it's like, even though you say it's almost certain, that means there's still a percentage of like, hey, it's worth a shot. Because it's like, you get, you know, because Macy kind of gets too caught up in the numbers like that of like, oh yeah, like 97% sure that Angela's still not in there. But the fact of the matter, you know, that there's just 3% chance that there's another way, you know. But it's also like, you won't feel great about it. And the fact of the matter is that there are many aspects, you know, just because you think like emotions kind of get in the way, it's like, which, you know, Macy had told Mel, like Galvin was kind of like, they're a valuable component in all of this too. Because the thing is, Macy kind of like pushed her emotions out of the way and kind of became kind of the way she is, because it's kind of like a defense mechanism. Because like, I guess for such a long time, considering her upbringing and stuff like that, she's always kind of felt like she needed to keep her emotions in check. And that's how she became like, what you might regard as cold but calculated person that she is, because of that, you know. And I think this is going to like be the steps towards her kind of being like, it's okay to feel a little bit more, especially sure that's going to be even more prevalent when it comes to this whole Galvin situation. But luckily the sisters are able to work together, and it ends up revealing a spell that their mom had made just for this instance, and they're able to save Angela. Sadly, Trip ended up dying because of it. Now that's an interesting twist on many different levels. One, Trip, the partner, died, which is interesting because I talked about it before with the whole aspect of like, I'm curious what they're going to do with the whole Nico and Mel situation. Because in the original series, there was the whole Prue and Andy situation. Andy once again, I could be misremembering this wrong, but I think Andy did find out the truth about Prue, but eventually he died. I forgot, like, I think it was like a demon, whatever the case may be, he died. And eventually Daryl, who wasn't in the know, eventually became in the know, I think. I could be 100% wrong. I was curious because I saw, like, Trip was there. I thought they were going to wipe his memory. I was wondering how that was all going to go down, but it's like, nope, Trip ended up dying in it. Charity fixed up the situation. I was like, okay, so how's she going to handle this situation? Oh, she made it so that, it appears that he hung himself. Oh man, that sucks, but I guess that's okay. Oh no, and she also made it so that he is supposedly the killer. I'm like, what? I was like, that sucks. I get it. You're trying to make it so that there's no suspicion. So because if it's left open, like, oh, these unsolved murders, people are going to be looking into it, and it's going to draw Nico closer to the sisters and stuff like that. So there's that, but also it's just kind of like you're staining a good man's name. You're making him out to be some killer, that he's this and that, which is going to play a point because, like, I'm sure Nico's not going to believe that. Sure, she's going to investigate everything and probably going to look into things, kind of being a little suspicious in that regard. I have no idea. But that's so trippy to me, which kind of begs the question in my mind because they killed off Trip like that. Makes me go, okay, so is Nico being set up as kind of being the Daryl in this situation? Is he going to be like a combination of Daryl and Andy? Because not only is he going to be like the police confidant for the charmed ones, Nico's also going to be acting as, like, the police confidant who's also a love interest. So is it like, I don't know. We do have that aspect of, like, oh, the two head cops in the show one of them ends up dying. So it's just, that's where I'm leaning with that, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. Because the sad thing is, too, like I said, I don't think Nico's done with it. She'll probably do her own investigating because she'll probably won't have, because it's like, oh, that was her friend and everything. We saw that they kind of had that relationship. But it kills Mel even more because not only did she already have a secret, but now she has even more on top of it of, like, I know what really happened to Trip. It was nobody's fault. It was just an accident. Because I thought they were just going to end up like, oh yeah, maybe he got knocked out. We'll have to wipe his memory. It's like, no, he died. I wasn't expecting that. So now the guilt, because it's already eating away at her already. So now the guilt will continue to hasten with Mel in that regard, so I'm curious. There was also, interestingly enough, and the girls kind of hint at it, it's like, yo, what's up with you, like, Harry and Charity? Because he had talked about the fact is that, like, they're not the only one, about, because he had brought up, he referenced, like, oh, breaking rules and following your instincts about certain things, and the way Harry acted around her, and she was kind of acting like Harry, like, just the way they acted around her, like, you two were a thing, weren't you? And that's what I'm thinking. I guess White Lighter, well, I guess it's a power position thing where it's like he's a White Lighter, so he's kind of like a servant, and she's an elder, so that's probably something you're not supposed to. Well, we do know, I mean, at least with the original shows, White Lighters were supposed to never hook up with their charges. Well, that might be the thing. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, because let's not forget, Harry has watched over a whole bunch of witches. Like, obviously the charm was on his first. Who's to say she wasn't just a regular witch at one point in time before she became ranked as an elder? So her and Harry probably had a thing back in the day. So they might be kind of like the Piper and Leo of the story. But they broke things off the moment she became an elder, at the very least, when they were, like, when she was still just like a regular witch, like, they broke things off then. So it's like, but they still have that history and they still kind of feel it towards each other. That's what I'm thinking. Because it didn't even click in my head initially. Because I was like, oh, maybe it was a power position for her being an elder. But I'm like, no, elders all had, in this case, they're witches. So she was just a regular witch at one point in time. So she had to have been under Harry's charge. And that's what this whole thing's about. That's where my mind is about it initially. So we'll kind of have to wait and see in that regard. Obviously, there was the whole situation with Maggie and Parker. That's kind of that's a crazy situation. And it's like, Maggie kissed him and everything. Obviously, that was to kind of take the focus away from the Maggie the Angela Wu situation. But it does complicate things because it's like, oh yeah, like, your friend / sorority sister Lucy that's her boyfriend, and you kissed him, and it obviously makes some weird awkwardness between you and Parker, because her and Parker already hit it off, plus, like, he kind of inspired her with the whole, like, you can shred Maggie, like, if you feel this one way about yourself, tell yourself a different story. You don't have to kind of be confined to that whole situation. So we'll kind of have to wait and see about that, because she's deciding like, oh, I'm gonna go study on my own. Like, I'm sure like everything that went down is probably like, oh, I need to handle this on my own anyway. But I'm sure the extra bonus reason of like, I need to stay away from Parker is that too. So the thing is, that's Lucy's boyfriend. So I'm sure you're not going to be able to completely avoid him, but we'll see how that ends up turning out. I'm wondering, because it's kind of interesting. I'm curious to see. I think the sisters. No, I'm thinking of the TV show Grimm. I wonder, is that going to be a thing? Because I don't remember if the sisters had to do that in the original series or not. Whether they wrote into the Book of Shadows, they might have. I definitely know it was definitely a Grimm thing, but I can't remember if the original show did that or not. Because like there's blank pages. Obviously, like that one page was blanked off until like all three sisters came together on a specific subject, and then like it revealed itself. So there might be other things sprinkled in there that their mom has hidden away, or maybe that is just for them to write down with their own experiences, that there's stuff that other people haven't come across either. I wonder, is it one of those things, and it's probably not, but I wonder, is there actually a finite amount of pages in the book, or is the book kind of like an infinite notebook where it's kind of like, it seems like there's a finite amount, but it's just magically, it's an infinite book that keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. It crossed my mind. I never really thought about it before. Maybe that's come up too. I don't know. There is an interesting thing that Harry does say, that there will be consequences for disobeying the elders, even if they were right. The elders being the higher authority and stuff like that. What that consequence will be, I'm very interested to see. But at the end, we see Charity gives because at first, like the way they were setting it up, I'm like, are we going to find out Charity's actually kind of a bad guy? It's like, no, someone comes there and like does something, like his eyes glow and he grabs the Harbinger. And part of me goes, there is a part of my brain that went like, is that the Cole of this series? Because I'm just waiting. I'm like, who is it going to be? Is there even going to be a Cole of the series? Because Cole's one of my like one of my other favorite characters of the original show. Just because I always loved the whole him and Phoebe thing. It was just as complicated as the whole Leo and Piper thing. Probably even more so, just because like the whole like duality and him struggling to try and be a good person for Phoebe, but while also trying to be a good person for himself, and just you're a demon at nature. So there's that whole thing. But that's where my mind immediately goes. I'm like, is that supposed to be like the Cole of this series? And if so, what does his demonic form look like? If there is a Cole, even if it's not him and it's someone else, what would just my mind's racing with all of that. So maybe that has something to do with the bad guys, but I'm curious, like, what exactly? We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. But like I said, a lot of interesting things. I'm so interested to see where all of this takes us going into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good